How's it going, everybody? I like doing nothing. Doing nothing's fun. So that's why I decided to take up the hobby about talking about $10 to $20 3x3s. It's the perfect way to do nothing. Wait, where did you come from? Today we're going to be talking about mid-range 3x3s, specifically the new released Dayan Guhong version 4, which I recently got from thecubicle.com. So, I'm going to start by talking about the scene of $10 to $20 3x3s before the Guhong V4, and then reviewing the Guhong V4, and finally saying what impact it has on the mid-range market, because there's not very many mid-range 3x3s out there right now. For some reason, cubes recently seem to always be either below $10 or above $25. There hasn't really been much in between. And the $10 to $20 market, as a result, has been very not active. There's been a couple of releases over the past few years, but nothing's been crazy or notable or anything. But the Dayan Guhong version 4 is the first notable release in the $10 to $20 range, coming in at $15 in a while. So today we're going to be reviewing it. So what did I know about the Dayan Guhong version 4 before it released? Well, I knew that it was the first ever cube that was a version 4 of anything, and I also knew that it was my friend Owen's main over the GAN 11M Pro. I knew it was $15, filling up the mid-range space that hasn't been filled up in a long time, and most interestingly, it is very, very light, coming in at like 66 grams. This is important because it makes it stand out from both the budget cubes and most of the flagship cubes. The only cube that is as light as the Guhong V4 is the GAN 11M Pro, and that thing is $65, so yeah. The Guhong V4 comes in this really interesting and nice looking box. It's got this indigo and different shades of blue and some purple, with some orange text and an orange outline of the cube design, which I think looks really, really cool. Inside you have the cube and some accessories. These include a screwdriver and a pamphlet. Now, usually people don't really care about these things, but I'm actually going to look at them. So, the pamphlet is actually really cool because it includes OLL, PLL, F2L, and cross cases. Now, this is actually something that I've never seen in a cube pamphlet. Even the GAN pamphlet doesn't have this much detail. So that's really cool. The screwdriver, it's bad. Also, I forgot there's this really sweet bag that comes with the cube. That's really nice. Now for some specs about this cube. Obviously, I've stated before, it's very light. It's 66 grams. And it's 56 millimeters, the normal size for a 3x3, which actually makes it different from its predecessor, the Guhong V3, which was actually kind of small. It was a 54 millimeter cube. So that's definitely interesting. The magnets, I'd say, are medium. There was obviously a lot of discrepancy on if they were strong, because people were saying they were strong and some people were saying they were weak. I think the reason for that, this might also be due to the lightness, is that when you're turning, they're not super noticeable. But if you're like turning slowly, then they feel strong. So I'd say they're medium, actually. The first thing I noticed about this cube was how light it was. Now, you might have an idea of what a 66 gram cube is like, but until you really get it, you really have no clue. It's really a unique feeling. And especially this is true compared when you're holding one cube in one hand and one cube in the other. You can really tell a difference in the weight. And not saying this is a good or bad thing, it's just interesting, and it definitely sets it apart from other cubes. When I started turning the cube, I saw it was really fast. It was also really, really loose. So I knew it had potential, but it needed to have put a little work into it. I started by tightening the cube. No, not with that screwdriver. That one's garbage. With the YJ screwdriver. And then after that, I put some Max Command on the tracks. And Max Command is my go-to lube for slowing down cubes and making it smoother, which it definitely worked to slow it down and make it a lot more controllable, and also not be so floppy and loose, because it was really loose out of the box. But the corner cutting didn't suffer from this. In fact, the corner cutting is really, really good, especially the reverse cutting. I was really surprised how good the reverse cutting does. It goes over line to line. And if you want to know what the sound of this cube is like, then I'll just There you go. But still, as I played around with the cube, did solves, mess with setup, the thing that stood out to me the most still was the weight. And I've decided that it's a good thing because it actually affects the turning feel, in my opinion, in a good way, to make it just feel effortless and just smooth, and like it's a really unique feeling. It's hard to describe, but it's really good. And I also think that the lightness is going to help with the mid-range cubes and help getting more. Why do I say that? Because the problem with mid-range cubes and why there weren't so many, in my opinion, is because the budget cubes were starting to get just as good as the flagship cubes. So a company could just make a budget cube and a flagship cube that had more features, and there was no use in making a mid-range cube. But now we have this with the unique feature of the lightness that isn't really available anywhere else except for the GAN 11M Pro. I think it's going to help more companies to decide and make more mid-range cubes, which I think is a very good thing. Does the Guhong V4 M have any flaws? Well, of course, all cubes have flaws. The one thing that I noticed was that after I tightened the cube, because tightening was really necessary because it was extremely loose out of the box, although the corner cutting distance was still the same, it was significantly snappier for the smaller cuts, which I don't think is a good thing. You always want your smaller corner cuts to be smooth so you can execute algs well. And I think that also led to my second problem with it, which was that sometimes during last layer I'd make small catches and it would cost me a little bit of time. So those problems I think are slightly linked, and it might not be the best cube for rough turners. That's another thing that I think might be a problem with it, is that if you turn super aggressively, then this cube is probably not for you. Also, did I mention the screwdriver is terrible? It's one of my 3 worst enemies. So to conclude, the Dayan Guhong V4 M is an excellent cube. However, the fact that there are cubes under $10, such as the RS3 M 2020, that are also excellent, makes it in a bit of an awkward position in terms of who I can recommend it for. So, the 4 people I would recommend it for is someone who only has a budget cube such as the RS3 M 2020 and wants to step up into mid-range cubes, someone who is unsatisfied with their current main and likes the idea of a light, fast, and relatively inexpensive cube, and someone who is very interested in trying a light cube but doesn't have $65 to spend, and collectors as the other person. And of course, if you are going to get this cube, make sure you get it from thecubicle.com and use code Nathan5 for 5% off. Well, my plan for doing nothing didn't really work out because the Guhong V4 is going to make it so that there's more mid-range cubes, in my opinion. So now I'm looking for something else that I can do that's doing nothing. Oh, I know. I can talk about the good things about the Guhong V4 screwdriver. Yeah, because there's none.